Welcome everyone to Deep Dreams Podcast. My name's Dave. Very excited to be here as always. Today we have a very, very interesting episode. First of all, before we get started, mods, you're welcome to mute anyone in the chat who give them one warning if they're being disruptive. And if they don't listen to that warning, you can mute them. And any anti-Semitism, it's instant ban. That's what we do here. So my guest today is Cynane, who is a nuclear engineer. Cynane. Oh my God. Cynane, oh my gosh, is a nuclear engineer, author of the upcoming book, Taking Off the Tinfoil Hat. It's how lizard people and space lasers dismantled my Christian worldview. She's also a TikToker. Welcome, Cynane.
Oh, I muted myself. Hey, thanks for having me on.
How you doing? I called you Cynane. Where was my brain? My brain is already like...
It's
okay. Already jumbled.
It's a tough. Okay. You can call me whatever you want. Sin for short. So that's
Sin.
Fine.
Okay. Wow, that was weird. Okay, so welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about some pretty heavy topics. But first, what are we drinking?
Negronis.
Yep. So apparently we've had this on the show before. I've forgotten about exactly when, but I'm sure I've had it before because as soon as I tasted it last night when I was testing it, I could tell that it was the same monstrosity that I made last time. And I was like, why does this taste so bad? And turns out we had the wrong vermouth or vermouth. I'm not very good at words. We had the dry version and it tasted so bad. No. So I ordered Uber Eats. Like at that time of night, I couldn't drive and I didn't want to drive and busy, and I ordered Uber Eats to come drop off a new bottle, and it arrived and I was like, great, got the bottle, and he's like, oh, I need to scan your ID. I'm like, okay, cool. And my license was invalid by 3 days and I didn't realize, and he was out the front talking on the phone for like 20 minutes, and then he came back in, he's like, I got to take the bottle off you. So I was like, what? So then he literally took the bottle and brought it back to the store because my ID was out of date by 3 days. And I was like, my wife has ID. Can we do it? And they're like, no, we can't do anything. So I didn't have the right vermouth again. So I looked up substitutes and I found that you can use a really sweet wine as a substitute, red wine as a substitute. And luckily we had one. And I tried it this morning and it is considerably better. So mine is a kind of a Negroni, but kind of like not on the same, not exactly the same, but it's at least better than what I was drinking last night. So yeah.
I'm so sorry you had so much trouble. My husband makes fun of this being my favorite cocktail. He says he married like an 80-year-old Italian grandfather. So it's my taste.
So first of all, what is QAnon? Can you give everyone like a brief explanation of like what is QAnon and how does it kind of line up with different conspiracy theories? I know there's like the classic like anti-vax, COVID, all that kind of stuff, but QAnon's kind of like the big brother to all that stuff. Like what is QAnon? Can you explain it for people who may not know?
All right, starting off with the light topics. So QAnon started in October of 2017, which is a lot earlier than I think most people realize. Like this was early into the Trump presidency. And, I have an engineering degree, so I am a nerd and I've been surrounded by nerds for a very long time. And so it started on this website called 4chan, which is kind of like Reddit. So Reddit is the website that most people know. And it's kind of like a message board forum style website. It's moderated. So if you post something that is anti-Semitic or like a physical threat or something, it will get taken down. 4chan is the less moderated version of Reddit, where all the nerds live. So I was like loosely familiar with this. And then within a month of QAnon starting, it moved to 8chan, which was a even less moderated version of 4chan. So this is literally like the part of the internet where like pedophiles and Nazis hang out, the worst of the worst. And
I've been to 4chan a fair few times. I don't know why, but I've grown up in the dark corners of the internet. And the thing with 4chan that I found different to a lot of websites is their posts will delete. So if it doesn't get enough traction, they'll delete within. A post will only live there for like maybe 30 minutes and then it's gone forever. So that's why that's how it's so hard to, even if they wanted to moderate, it's so hard to moderate. But for a long time, yeah, people were posting like really disgusting videos on there. My little brother was telling a story once how he was on there looking at a kitten thread, and it was just like kittens, right? And it was like cute photos of kittens, and you're like, oh, cool, like this. And then someone would post an image of like a barbecued kitten, and you're like, oh, that's fucked up. Like, so yeah, so it's like that's the kind of realm of like stuff that it's like the bottom of the barrel humanity on that website.
And that's 4chan. 8chan is like exponentially worse. And so I would try to explain some of these things to like my friends and family, like the normies, and like that it's so far beyond like, my family doesn't know how to use the internet, let alone, so like it's so far beyond anything that they can understand that it's just like, it's bizarre. And like these websites, this is like where memes are born. And they have a culture, and they have slang, and they have inside jokes and all this stuff. And one of the inside jokes or like pranks, trolls that would happen on these websites is that somebody would like pretend to be an agent of some kind, have insider knowledge, and they'd be like leaking information. And so there was like a CIA anon stands for anonymous, an FBI anon, a state trooper anon, and like this had happened many times. And like they'd get like a couple people who would follow them, and it would be like a fun little thing for a while, and then like it would fizzle out until 2017, which was the beginning of the end, when somebody was a QAnon. And I think that their original name was like Q Clearance Patriot, and then it became QAnon. But it was somebody who was claiming to have a Q level security clearance, which is like a DOE, Department of Energy, like security clearance designation. It's like top secret. It's like, up there. And they were claiming to have direct connection to the Trump administration and to Donald Trump himself. And they were claiming to be leaking secret information like from Trump to, onto this message board. And they would speak in like kind of like code, like Hillary Clinton was Alice, and like it was like follow the white rabbit, and like that meant something. And Hussein was like the code word for Obama. And like so they had all these like code words, and it was an operation. And it got a lot of traction. And people have since gone back and like kind of studied the history of this, which is super interesting. And they've kind of pinpointed like 3 big influencers who had big like Reddit, 4chan, and YouTube platforms, who took this from 4chan and 8chan within months of it starting and purposefully tried to like popularize it. And it fucking worked. And so it made it onto Reddit. And then over the next like year or two, it really blew up. There were Reddit boards, like calm before the storm was like a QAnon phrase, and like all this stuff. That had like over 70,000 people on it. There were other ones that had like 20 and 30,000 people on it. And Reddit is a borderline mainstream website. So like it was really getting a lot of traction. But the core of the conspiracy theory, like what Q was dropping, they were called Q drops, were his posts, was that there's a satanic cabal of evil elites who are billionaire elites who are pulling the strings of international governments and economies in order to drive the world towards an era of like one world order, which is like super vibey with like the evangelical and world times situation. And that they were running rings of like human trafficking, like child sex trafficking rings of like hundreds of thousands of children. And it was all coordinated under this like one organization, the cabal. And but they weren't doing this just for, money or something. They were satanic, and they were like sacrificing these victims as part of satanic rituals. Sometimes they said that it was like a sacrifice to the demon god Moloch, who was like an owl. Sometimes it was just Satan. Sometimes the conspiracy theory people said that they were literally like breeding children in tunnels under every major city. Like everybody had a different flavor, right? And you could pick and choose like what you believed and what you didn't believe, but like the general gist was that there is a global cabal of evil elites who are doing the most evil thing that you can possibly think of. And the only everybody's in the cabal. anybody who is rich or powerful or a Democrat is in the cabal. We're talking like obviously Hillary and Obama, they were like way up there. Bill Gates was supposed to be like the leader. George Soros was like a leader. But like Cher was in the cabal, and Tom Hanks was in the cabal, just like anybody who was like a big name. The only person who was rich and famous and was not in the cabal, who was actively fighting the cabal, is Donald Trump. Like mano y mano by himself. I'm gonna have to like occasionally cough. I'm getting over.
Yeah, that's okay. Cynane's a little sick at the moment. That's all right.
But so that's kind of like the core of the conspiracy theory. And it's insane. It's bonkers. But like for what it was like really taking off, because it was really just kind of leading into this general, like, one, the evangelical end times narrative, which is like literally just that narrative. And then just this like anti left wing woke fear mongering, so like people were just kind of like, I don't know. And so, and that was all up until 2018, 2019. So we're now like 2 or 3 years into this. And it got taken down off of the internet. 8chan basically got booted off the internet because, oh, I'm sorry, somebody commented adrenochrome. I totally forgot about the adrenochrome. Part of they were sacrificing their like child victims as like a satanic sacrifice, but also to raise their adrenaline levels before they were sacrificed. And then they would extract the oxidized adrenaline from their blood, which is called adrenochrome, which is a real substance, but I'm pretty sure you can buy it on Amazon. And they thought that this was either like a wicked high or like an anti-aging drug. And once again, I'm just like, anybody who has seen Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton lately knows that it's not an anti-aging drug. So,
do you know? So 4chan. This is what I was told by my younger brother. He was right in the. Okay, let me just say this. You shouldn't go to 4chan, but there are parts of 4chan that aren't as like disgusting and horrible. That are like, so when I say my little brother went to 4chan, I'm not saying he was like a creep. Okay, that's what I'm saying. But he would say he actually was visiting 4chan, or went to 4chan here and there when the flat earth stuff started to kick on, before QAnon started. But what was really funny is, at least in the communities that he was a part of, it started as like a meme, like what is something that we can get people to believe, like the rest of the world to believe, that would just like that would be like a mission to see if we can trick people and see if it actually works. So one example of what 4chan users did is they went on to a game called Habbo Hotel, and they all created black characters, and then the black characters, they all stood in the formation of a swastika, and it was like it was a kid's game, and it was like a way to like show the world, like just disrupt the world, to make it like, like chaos, right? Like we all came together and we did this thing, and it made mainstream news, right? And then they were like, well, with flat earth, let's see if we can make this flat earth thing so like popular and make so much sense to the right people that people will actually believe it. And it worked. There are so many flat earthers now who are like out there like talking about their fake maths and their fake like stuff, and it all started as a meme, as a joke, to see if like people could be fooled enough to believe it. And it's hilarious. Oh wow, we just quickly, we have a huge super chat from Noxic Informant. We normally read the super chats at the end, but I'm going to read this one now. Thank you so much, Neil. And Neil might be coming on the show very shortly, guys. Respond to the chats, buddy. I was still going to church when QAnon blew up around 2017, and my entire church was obsessed. My pastor was joined by Roger Stone on his podcast, and one of the members of my church was NIS Assembly David Pietro. They thought Trump was chosen. Yeah, it's wild, right? That's absolutely wild.
Yeah, so if we ever get time, we can circle back to the flat earth thing, because I have a whole flat earth tangent. But yeah, so basically, so 2017 is early. The fact that like that church was like jumping onto QAnon that early is like that you're deep in it, because basically in 2019, 8chan, which was hosting Q, was directly connected to at least 3 mass shootings,
Oh, really?
including yeah, the fact that people don't know this blows my mind. The big one, and I think the first one, was the Christchurch shooting, which was over in New
Yeah.
Zealand, so, like, that's your part of the world, and
When that happened, when I heard that happened, and I heard that everything was being leaked, I immediately went to 4chan to get my information and saw that
mm,
everyone was posting about it, because I knew, I was like, a scumbag like this, he'd be living on 4chan before any of the news even like was talking about it. And I went to 4chan, and sure enough, there's all his stuff there. Um,
he was posting I'm sure it made it to 4chan, but he was posting on 8chan.
mm,
And he had like I don't know the exact specifics, but like he had posted like a manifesto and like maybe had like videotaped part of this and like was putting it onto this website. And then within like months, another shooting, San Paulo, Texas Walmart shooting happened in 2019, where also like many people died, and it was a racially motivated shooting, like the Christchurch one was. The Christchurch was against like Islamic mosque. This one was against like it was in a Walmart, but it was in like a heavily Hispanic area.
mm,
And then again, literally within months, a third shooting in California at a synagogue, and all 3 of them were posting shit to 8chan, specifically like hyping up to it, and then like afterwards, like posting manifestos and like referencing the Christchurch manifesto. And so like they were literally, and like all of the comments on these posts were like egging them on and like encouraging them. And so
mm,
8chan got kicked off the internet. They like whoever was hosting them. I don't know how the internet works. They got super banned. And
mm,
the guy, and there's a whole other backstory to this about who was running 8chan at the time, because it was invented basically by a 15-year-old named Frederick Brennan who had brittle bones disease, and who was like an absolute free speech advocate. So like there should be no moderation. People should be able to say whatever they want. And so he made 8chan after the model of 4chan. It got bought by a father and son who lived over in the Philippines. And they have been running it since QAnon has been a thing, like since 2016, 2017. And if I can remember, like I know their names, but it's just not coming to me. They the father had to testify before the United States Congress, um, explaining like how his website was tied to so many mass shootings.
mm,
And then those 2 were basically like going from to all these different like internet service providers trying to get their website back up. And it took them a very long time because Q was not posting, so the QAnon community was like losing their minds because they didn't have any drops, until they did eventually get rehosted, but rebranded as 8kun. And they like Q eventually started posting again. And then like I want to say it was right before January 6th was like one of Q's last drops. And then they came back and they made a couple more like a year or 2 later. But it just hasn't, like, it's not really a thing anymore.
mm.
But that was 2019 mass shootings, 8chan kind of like dismantled. Shit really hit the fan in 2020, um, with what some people call pastel QAnon, and
You muted. You muted.
sorry, this is when it hit me, and this is when it like super mainstreamed. It was around in 2017. But it really blew up in 2020 because some again in like by this time they had a whole ecosystem of Q influencers. People, they called them bakers because like Q would
Mm,
drop crumbs and then they would bake the crumbs and basically just like interpret them, the stars. um and all of these like influencers had like hundreds of thousands of followers. One of the women who's like originally responsible for like promoting QAnon off of 8chan or off of 4chan, like one of the 3 original people, literally lives like a county over from me. Like it's like really upsetting to just even know that. But
mm,
they took the QAnon core message and they purposefully marketed it. They rebranded it. They purposefully stole the Save the Children hashtag. Um, that was a legitimate organization. Save the Children is like an actual charity that's been around since like the 1920s or something. But these like internet weirdos took hashtag Save the Children, co-opted it, and started using it to spread a bunch of like child trafficking misinformation. Ron Watkins, somebody just commented it. It's Ron Watkins and the father and the son. There was also like some sort of linguist analysis that somebody did a year or two ago to analyzing all of the drops and things by the language to try to figure out who Q was. And they basically said that they think that Ron Watkins has been running the Q account for the last couple of years, at least. It's not like definitive, but we basically know who Q is at this point. And he ran for the House of Representatives for the state of Arizona. So that's super fun for us. He didn't win, but Q himself like ran for the House of Representatives, and Donald Trump like retweeted him aggressively. But pastel QAnon. So in the summer of 2020, they spread misinformation, and instead of talking about adrenochrome and mole children and like these hard pill topics, which are crazy, they sound like flat earthers, they tried to purposefully spread soft pills, which was basically just like, we just care about child sex trafficking, and we just are worried about like corruption in the government, and you know we think that there's like an elite that is like, they're not doing good things. And so it happened in the same summer of Black Lives Matter. And so you had all of these Christian and Mormon mommy bloggers who are very active online, but in a very different, not 4chan sphere. And they all had massive platforms on Instagram and Facebook, like the two most mainstream platforms, with like pastel, inspirational quotes and pictures of their kids and stuff. And so they took all of these like hashtag Save the Children conspiracy theory misinformation about child trafficking and started posting them on their platforms that also had like tens and hundreds of thousands of people, but like under the guise of like mommy bloggers, like the most normal people that you can think of. And child sex trafficking, human trafficking, labor trafficking, these are all extremely real issues. But what was happening in 2020 was misinformation. It was distracting from the real issues by promoting just made up nonsense.
I got into a huge heated argument with he's kind of a celebrity, Australian celebrity-esque, online celebrity at least, in Australia, called Bo Greaves. And he started posting this stuff on he's not like super, like he's not super, he's not like a celebrity, but he's like, people know him. And I got into a super heated debate with him about this stuff on his Facebook, and I kind of pointed out that what he was doing is spreading misinformation, and it came down to, what, don't you care about children and all that stuff. But I was kind of pointing out, like, look, if there's a fire in a city and there are like 5,000 people all calling in for different buildings, the chances of the fire department getting to the right building is like drastically reduced. And I was like, especially if you say the whole city's on fire and like they just don't know where to go. I was like, there is obviously a problem with sex trafficking. There's obviously a problem with pedophile rings. There's obviously a problem with corruption in the government. There's obviously a problem with a lot of things. But it's like the problem with QAnon and conspiracy theories is they point in the completely wrong direction. Like they're there's a big leap from, and this is something I argue with my family a lot about. There's a big leap from the government is corrupt, they're taking bribes to pass certain projects, versus the government is trying to kill us by putting poison in our vaccines, and they're pretending that they're taking it themselves, but they're using fake needles. Like there's a huge jump there. One is like, makes sense. Oh yeah, they're being paid by the, I don't know, forestry lobby to cut down trees or something. That makes sense. We can see the records. They should be taken to court and tried for it. Versus, no, they want to kill everyone. Like, why? Population control. Why? Like, and what stage does someone go from being a normal person to running a very successful business, becoming a billionaire, and then therefore now I want to drink blood, adrenochrome, and now I'm going to start poisoning the world? Like, at what stage does someone become evil? You know what I mean?
Well, that just goes into like the entire like mind warp of white Christian nationalism, because I think that anybody who is not a white Christian nationalist is evil. And it's all a part of this like in-group, out-group like dynamic, because the worse you can paint the outside to be, the better you feel about being on the inside, and the more special you get to be, and the more like righteous you get to be. And that's exactly what happened with these mommy bloggers, because they wanted to feel like moral crusaders when everybody else was like, protesting about Black Lives Matter and stuff. But instead of jumping on BLM, because of racism and white supremacy, they were like, what's better than fighting racism? Fighting child sex trafficking. And
Yeah.
so,
How dare you? Yeah.
and
Because-
and this was, well, and really it piggybacked. So QAnon piggybacked on the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, because that was 2016, and then QAnon was 2017. And the pastel QAnon hashtag Save the Children thing piggybacked on the Wayfair shipping conspiracy theory. So the Wayfair conspiracy theory was basically just like a TikTok trend for a little bit that like got really, really popular. But then like, because there was already this like QAnon in the water kind of situation, people like really latched onto it. And so the Wayfair thing got a lot of people interested in these like trafficking conspiracy theories, and then it blew up over 2020. And there's like a bunch of like statistics that I can't rattle off the top of my head, but and that's exactly. Go ahead.
What I was going to ask you is, I've got some QAnon beliefs, and I want to just see if you can add or remove any of these. This is my research. It's so hard to find information on like just concise, clear information on this.
Well, they don't all believe the same thing, so
yeah, I know, right? So this is some stuff I've written down. So the proponents of QAnon believe in the storm, which is an imminent event known as the storm, during which thousands of members of the cabal will be arrested and possibly sent to Guantanamo Bay. The deep state opposition, they claim that the deep state or secret government within the US government is underlying Trump and his efforts. The Q drop, the movement names, comes from Q, an anonymous figure with a high-level government security inside, dropping clues about secret wars in online forums, child trafficking rings, which we've talked about. The JFK conspiracy, some QAnon followers believe that John F. K. Jr., who died in a plane crash in 1999, faked his death and would re-emerge and support Trump. The opposition to mainstream media, which is self-explanatory, and they believe in global elites. And so that seems to be the main crux of QAnon. But
that's
what I find is also tangential to QAnon beliefs is usually like anti-vax. Usually like the moon landing was fake, 9/11 was inside job. It all comes with the same kind of package.
So yes and no. And like, this is something that like is very, I mean, it's interesting to me, but it's also like, I just think that we're going to spend the next century studying like this decade. It's insane. There was always fringe conspiracy theory believers, the 9/11 truthers, the moon landing people. I met a flat earther back in like 2019 before all of this stuff. And
I have family members that are flat earthers, and I work for a surveying and town planning company where we literally have to put algorithms in our data recorders to compensate for the Earth's spherical, like the curve of the Earth. And I would tell them this, I would show them this, and they were like, "This is like blank faces." Like, Anyway,
but like, they have always been around, and the anti-vax movement has always been. There has been an anti-vax movement for as long as there has been the vaccine. Like, there were people protesting smallpox vaccines, and so like, these things have always been there, but they've always been fringe. And I think that there's always going to be some small subset of people who believe in like the most insane thing, like believe in lizard people. And there's always going to be those people. But like, what happened in 2020 and like with QAnon and all of this is that facets of that became mainstream. Now it's just like everybody believes it. And because they became susceptible to like QAnon, they become susceptible basically just to like an alternative information environment. And so, well, if there's, a satanic cabal of, say like whatever, then like maybe we didn't land on the moon. It's like, it's not that big of a leap at that point. But I don't think that in an alternate universe, the people who believe in QAnon would have ever believed in like a fake moon landing, you know?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
if this
yeah, yeah.
hadn't gotten so popular, like they would have never like kind of gone down that route. Um, sorry.
Something I want to kind of point out too is the whole reason we're talking about this is because you have an upcoming book. The book. Let me just share your website. Can you tell us a little bit about your book?
Yes.
And we'll dive into your story a little bit too, because like this is what I want to talk about next. Is your story is tied up in all of this like crazy, and so we'll get into that. But first, let's talk about your book. Is essentially, I guess, a longer version of what we'll be talking about today, right?
So the book is basically my my journey of deconstruction, you know, another deconstruction memoir, but from the perspective of conspiracy theories, because I deconstructed from white Christian nationalism because of conspiracy theories. And I needed to understand like why it was the white evangelicals that were falling for these conspiracy theories. And like my family and the people that I knew and looked up to and loved fell for these conspiracy theories and things because they were white evangelicals. And that just like was that was finally an overwhelming like overwhelming isn't a big enough word, level of cognitive dissonance of like these are good Christian people and like they're talking about Jewish space lasers. And so and it was because they were white evangelicals. So I deconstructed. I went through about 2 years of like dealing with all of their drama while we were planning our wedding. And then I had a physical snap where I was like, oh no. And then spent the next year basically just trying to put my feet under me. Did not know the word deconstruction, did not know the word exvangelical. I didn't know that there were people like me. And I found a couple people on TikTok, like April LaJoy, who's just like making like humor videos, and like Lacey Bean, and like these people who have like, you know, hundreds of thousands of like TikTok followers just making jokes. And it was so weird to find people who thought the same way that I thought. And then from them, I was able to develop a language. I was able to find resources, and I read a bunch of books. And focusing on, you know, I had a lot of the normal like deconstruction stuff that I had to work through, like biblical inerrancy and like what about hell and what about like homophobia and the patriarchy and like all this stuff. But I also had to work through all the conspiracy theory shit. Like, why do they believe in conspiracy theories? What is the connection? And what I finally found that was the best explanation for me was when I found books on like cult psychology and the language of cult psychology, being able to apply that to the conspiracy theories psychology. And the Venn diagram is a circle. You know, and again, like this doesn't apply to everyone, because there are those fringe figures who have been flat earthers since well before 2020. And, you know, I think that they might have a little bit of something else going on. But, you know, for people like my parents, like who fell for QAnon because they're white evangelicals, it is because of the totalistic ideology of white Christian nationalism. So
you ask any conspiracy like someone who's like right in the weeds of QAnon, usually, like I've never met anyone. I've talked to a lot of them, and I've never met anyone who is not some form of Christian or religious. Like I've even asked on Reddit, like, can you point me to, you know, an atheist, you know, QAnon supporter, because I can't find them. And it's a big claim to say that they were QAnon supporters because they were evangelicals. So I looked up a study, and I'll post it right now so people can look it up as well. But in the study, it kind of concluded that among the religious respondents, 17.5% expressed a positive view of QAnon. It was highlighted that it was primarily Christians, and more specifically evangelical Christians, who support QAnon. And it's like overwhelmingly this study showed this. And as we talked about this before, is, as you mentioned before, is this is a problem that is deadly. There was the
Mhm.
Christchurch
Oh,
shooting.
yeah.
There were other shootings. There were people dying because they didn't get the vaccine. There were innocent people who were dying because they didn't get vaccines. Like there's a lot of pain and suffering that's happening in the world under the guise of this cult-like thinking. It's wild. So why do you think it is evangelicals?
Yeah, so just to like, give another reference on some of this stuff, the book Taking America Back for God by, I want to say, Andrew Whitehead and Samuel L. Perry. They're sociologists, and their book is about white Christian nationalism, not about conspiracy theories. And they're basically trying to explain, like, who are they? What do they believe? And they developed a scale of like how white Christian nationalist you are. And then they like broke it up into 4 categories. And then they asked them a bunch of follow-on questions like, was the Civil War fought over slavery? Do you believe in voter fraud? Do you believe in QAnon? Are you anti-vax? And then like a whole bunch of like other stuff, like religious stuff and like whatever. And how like, are you anti-divorce, anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ, all of that. And every single one of those questions, it was a linear trend. Like the more white Christian nationalist you were, the more you believed in these things. Like it was a one-to-one linear relationship, which is absolutely insane to me. And when you pull up those statistics, and it's difficult because people were trying to understand what was going on and trying to study this in real time. And if you find numbers on like the statistics of how many people believed in QAnon and stuff, the answer is wildly different in 2019 to 2021 to 2023. When you go back to like right before January 6th, those numbers are a lot higher. I found one before we were we were going to talk, and it said like 2/3 of QAnon believers say that being a Christian is important to being truly American. 2/3, 66%. So, like it is the white evancilicals, like overwhelmingly the statistics, and it's not all.
I know that a lot of like I know a lot of like a lot of people. Oh, I lost my train of thought. Do you think is it just the white evangelicals, or is it other like Hispanic groups or black groups as well?
There are other groups. There like and nothing is monolithic. Like of course there are, and there's exceptions, and like there are people of lots of different demographics, and like I'm not saying like it's all of them, but like it's most of them. And and it's not even really so much the real issue is not like who believes in QAnon. It's who's a white Christian nationalist. And you don't have to be white to be a white Christian nationalist. You don't have to be white to, uphold white supremacy. You don't have to be a man to uphold patriarchy. But it is mostly white evangelical.
So what is white Christian nationalism?
So, and again, Taking America Back for God, incredible book. I wish it was one of the first books that I had read. And there's a couple other books by the same authors, like The Flag and the Cross by Samuel Perry. And I just read another one by Andrew Whitehead. But American exceptionalism is basically, or white Christian nationalism is, for me, and I was a white Christian nationalist. And so, personally, how I define it is how I broke out of it. And what I had to deconstruct were the 2 pillars of white Christian nationalism, which is biblical inerrancy, which is kind of the heart of evangelicalism, and American exceptionalism. They believe that that America, and you don't have to be American to be a white Christian nationalist. You have white Christian nationalists in Australia and Canada and everywhere else, but it's a big American thing.
We made it. We made it, Mom.
I'm so sorry. But they believe that this is like God's chosen country, that we are founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and that we are blessed with unprecedented freedom and prosperity as a reward from God for our adherence to Judeo-Christian principles. And and the statistics on this are terrifying.
So
terrifying because and different people have done different polls and things, but there was one statistic that said 80-something% of white evangelicals believed that this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and like 80-something% believed that this country should still currently be founded on Judeo-Christian principles. 45, so 60% of all Americans, not white Christians, believe that this country was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and 45% believe that we should currently be founded on Judeo-Christian principles. 45% of all Americans believe that we should be founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And
do you know? So the only problem with that, though, is that would involve slavery, because the Bible has like explicit strings. This is what I always ask people. They bring up this stuff, and I go like, okay, well, let's look at Judean Christian principles. Like, would slavery be okay? And they always say, no, slavery would not be okay. And I go, okay, show me where in the Bible it condemns slavery. It doesn't. You know?
I have
here we go.
Within reach. All right, so this is Taking America Back for God. It's incredible. This is another one, The Founding Myth, with Andrew Seidel. He's like a constitutional lawyer, and this is a great book for just the American exceptionalism claim, and he really combats the idea that we were founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and this idea that we are blessed by God for this is that was the easiest thing to deconstruct for me. Coming out of white Christian nationalism, American exceptionalism was the first thing to go, because it's so easy with the most basic research into American history to say that, oh no, we don't have unprecedented freedom or prosperity. We are founded on slavery and segregation and misogyny and what we have done to Native Americans and the boarding schools, and it is and the super racist and awful like immigration policies that we have had going back to the 1800s and stuff, and all of these things that, I'm sure maybe I had heard parts of them in school, but I went to a private Christian school. We were not taught evolution. And you can imagine what kind of propaganda was given to us in our like history classes. And they loved American history, and they worshiped the founding fathers and the Pilgrims. But, as an adult, now that I'm like questioning things, going back and just looking at the most basic level of American history, you realize that the American exceptionalism claim is just the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard. And then the biblical inerrancy claim, which is the religious side of it, the evangelical side of it, that's much harder to break out of. And it was because that's like a religious belief. It's a faith thing. And the indoctrination runs deep. But I'm like, oh my God, this is great. I'm like sitting in a pile of my books. So
I've actually that as well. So I actually just added a recommended reading list, and as you're talking, I just added those books. What was that book that you just said? So there?
This was what really helped me get out of the idea of biblical inerrancy, how the Bible actually works. It's written by like a theologian PhD guy, and and when you are a Christian and evangelical, you can't just walk away from that without replacing it with something. Like you have to you need to understand it in order to like have another alternative. And that's what like this author, and then also Rob Bell, he has a couple books.
Rob Bell.
And, yeah.
Rob Bell. I remember when he was ostracized by the whole, church. Is that the same guy?
I think so.
Rob Bell. He wrote Love Wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I remember
that book, and he has a couple others that talk about this almost the same exact thing. And what do you do with Bible if you don't believe that it is this non-contradictory, perfect word of God that you were like that has an answer to every single one of like life's minutia problems. And like, what can you do with it? And like, is there still room to like, study it or respect it or get anything out of it? And like, the answer is yes, if you want to. But yeah.
So I've just added your books, the books that you suggested to this recommended reading list. These are all the books that are suggested on Deep Drinks episodes. So, or books that I personally recommend, mostly from guests though. So if you do want to support the channel, you can actually use this link to buy the books, and they're affiliate links. So I get like a couple of cents every time you purchase. Woo! So, let's step right back a little bit. Let's take a big sip of our Negroni, and what was it like for you growing up as a Christian? What kind of Christian were you? Were you the kind of Christian that believed they had a relationship with Jesus?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you talk to Jesus? Were you part of a church that prayed in tongues? Did you lay on hands for healing? Like how in it were you?
I was in it. I was thoroughly in it. So I got a little amuse-bouche sampling of all kinds of evangelical Christianity. My family went to a Calvary Chapel, which is a non-denominational, like cool kids, like wannabe mega church, like California, beautiful people. Everybody's wearing like board shorts and they have like a rock band, like non-denominational church, which basically just means like Southern Baptist theology, but like prettier. And I went to a private Christian school for elementary and middle school, which was basically just like straight up a white Christian nationalist indoctrination school. It was attached to a different non-denominational evangelical Protestant church. The mascot was the Patriots, like the 1776 like Revolutionary War Patriots. We had Plymouth Day every year where we would very racistly dress up as Native Americans or Pilgrims, and they literally, I remember this, and it's so weird for me to remember this, and I don't know why I do, but they had Ken Ham, the young earth creationist, come speak at our school, like as an invited lecturer when I was in like kindergarten or first grade. And I remember going to that.
He did his science training. Well, he actually did do science training, but he did that only an hour from my house here in Brisbane. So Ken Ham trained at I think it was QUT. It was one or two universities in Brisbane, and then we exported him to America. No. You're welcome.
No. So like that was like, you know, and like no evolution, no sexual education, like all of that. And then for when I got a little bit older, when I was 12, I met my best friend. I met my best friend, and she went to a true Southern Baptist church. And so I would go with her to youth group there on weeknights. And through her and through a couple of the families at the private Christian school that we went to, and a bunch of families at that Southern Baptist church, they were all affiliated with IBLP, which is the Institute in Basic Life Principles cult that was run by Bill Gothard. The Shiny Happy People documentary on Amazon Prime just came out, and it is phenomenal. If you don't know it, it's the Duggar family, the 19 Kids and Counting show. They were all involved in IBLP. And hyper patriarchy, like the theological school of thought was like Reconstructionism, like after Rousas, Rushdoony, Bill Gothard like followed that kind of stuff. The umbrellas of authority.
Sydney Davis Jr. went to the same church as the Duggars.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Sydney Davis Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild. That's wild. I had friends. It's so funny because like how like it was such a small world.
All all interconnected, kind of.
Oh yeah, because like I had friends who were like taking selfies with like the Duggar sisters at camps and things at the summer, and like they'd come home and like show me like the pictures with the Duggar girls because they were like celebrities for us. And it was a 1 foot in, 1 foot out situation. It was very weird because my family had no direct contact with any of that. We did not homeschool. We went to that private Christian school, but all of my friends were homeschooled, and they were like using the ATI IBLP homeschooling program, and like all of the girls were going to like IBLP summer camps. And I remember at my friend's house seeing like Bill Gothard VHS sermon tapes. And I'm really dating myself with the VHS reference, but like it was that kind of stuff is hyper fundamentalist. Girls can't wear more than 2 finger widths below the collarbone for necklines. You can't show your shoulders, so you have to wear floor length skirts. Like I don't even know if they were allowed to wear pants. Like it had to be skirts. Like you're not supposed to cut your hair, which is very like fundamentalist Latter-day Saints. And like that stuff was like hyper creepy. But again, it was peripheral. Like my family wasn't in it. Like it was just like everybody I knew was. But like those were still the moms who were like running our Bible studies and like teaching in our schools. And like I remember the weekend that I met my best friend, we were 12, and I was at like a weekend Bible summer camp for girls only called Girls on Fire for Jesus with like a Z and the number 4. It was awful.
Yes, I love I love it.
It
The
was
Christian
awful.
memes.
Even as a 12-year-old, I was like, this is so cringe.
Wait, sorry, I need to get some cringe out there as well. I used to run a small group when I was an emerging leader called The Impact. What was it? It was an acronym or whatever. It was something. It was like The Impact was like something about like impacting, a powerful group of Christian teens or something. And it was just like, and like things we would do is like we'd get them in a room, like draw a picture of God, like what do you think God is? And everyone would draw like this, and like, it was like all like these were like grade 7 kids and stuff. Funny enough, one of them is now my boss. So yeah. One of them is now my boss. It's so funny. We talk about all this stuff all the time. It's wild. Yeah, it's wild.
That's insane. Yeah. I remember at this one specific event, like they had us like in a public park at the beach, and like we were like chanting, "Good news in, good news out." That's what the Bible's all about. Bad news in, bad news out. That's what the world is all about. And like having to chant that in public was like so embarrassing.
Do you remember the song? Yeah, do you remember the song? Blessed be the name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Yeah. I'm tone impaired. Sorry. Yeah. So there's a line in there that goes, "He gives and takes away. He gives and takes away." My heart will say, "Blessed is the name of the Lord." And one of the staff members was like, "I won't sing the lyrics of that part of the song." And we're like, "Why?" And it's like, "Because God doesn't take away." And we're like, "Okay." And I was like, "But that's a scripture. Like they're quoting word for word a scripture." And I was like, even on the staff level, like people were making up their own religions. Like
so many like public like dance moves and things. But anyway.
The prayer flags, love it.
At that camp, because you said speaking in tongues and things, I remember like the 2 mothers who were leading it were 2 of the most IBLP related moms that I knew. Like didn't believe in birth control, kind of like IBLP moms. And sorry.
Get behind me, Satan.
Yeah. I call you out in the name of Jesus. And like they had us all like kind of spread out, and we're in the grass at the beach, at the park of the beach, and they asked us like they talked to us about speaking in tongues, and that if we wanted to speak in tongues, like God would let us, and that we should all pray silently to ourselves, because it's a very personal spiritual experience, that the Holy Spirit would like allow us to speak in tongues or whatever. And basically the implication with all of this, and like, I heard this multiple other times too, but the implication is like, if you're not speaking in tongues, then like you maybe you're not a real Christian. Maybe you're not actually saved. Maybe your name is not written in the Lamb's Book of Life, and you're going to be left behind with rapture. Talking about rapture anxiety. But basically, like, if you can't speak in tongues, then maybe you're not like a real Christian. And like this one girl who was an IBLP daughter was just like, I speak in tongues all the time. God damn it.
All the time. I'm embarrassed to say, but I was actually very scared for my wife, because I knew she hadn't spoken in tongues. And I would like subliminally pressure her, I guess, to be like, you should get baptized in the Spirit. Like, like you should, just think about it. Maybe you think about letting the Holy Spirit into your life. Like, I didn't say anything like that. And I never like fully pressured her, but I definitely, like, it was definitely concerning for me, because I was like, what, like she's just not going to make the cut? Because like the Bible says, like, what you have to be, unless you're born of water and the Spirit, you will not enter eternal life. So I was like, okay, well, that seems pretty clear.
Yeah, it's terrifying. It's built on so much fear, but like I was in it. The point is that I was in it. Okay. Like we had like, when we went to the beach, you had to wear a t-shirt over your bathing suit. Like they
don't want to make us men stumble.
Don't want to make them stop. You don't want, you as a 14-year-old do not want to have your like 45-year-old creepy like church uncle like lusting after you. And and like missionary trips in the summers. I did like a 6-week like Bible college program over like the summer when I was like 18 or something. And just like Bible camps and like church camps and like purity seminars, and like I got it all. But again, it was weird because my family they were evangelical. They were putting me into all of this stuff, but we weren't related to IBLP. And they were like almost more like white nationalist than like white Christian nationalist. They were evangelical. Like I said, they put us into the private Christian school, and like they were very much evangelical. But like, my friends' moms were like, women belong in the kitchen. But my mom was like a firefighter. And so it was just like a slightly different perspective. She had a real life experience. She had always been a Christian, I think, but she hadn't been like super fundamentalist about it. And when she was younger, she lived on her own, hyper independent, had been engaged or been proposed to like 8 times, and she had abusive relationships, and she had seen her friends stuck in abusive relationships and things. And so, she always told me, it was a lot of cognitive dissonance, and it was a lot of mixed messages, which is a problem, because it was like, you should don't be like a slut, never like kiss anybody. You should like wait for your God to send you a husband. Like you're gonna like God has a special husband for you. But at the same time, she was just like, you should go on a lot of dates, and like you should you should meet a lot of guys. Just like don't get attached. Never trust a man. Like a man can always leave you. She said that you can be married for 15 years and have 3 kids and he can still walk away. You need to have something of yourself that you can always fall back on. You need to have an education. And if you want to be a stay-at-home mom or something afterwards, like that's fine, but like something that you can always fall back on. And so none of my friends were getting that message. None of them were encouraged for higher education. None of them went to college. If they did go to college, they went to Bible college, specifically to find a Bible husband. And I was the only one where my mom was like, no, you better be fucking good at math. And naturally, I think I just like bent that way anyway. Like I was like the straight-laced, like, which is, a super fundy thing too, right? Like follow the rules and like, be the good Christian girl or whatever, but like also get straight A's and like all this stuff. And so I got to go to a public high school kind of, and then I got to go to a secular university, and people literally told my mom, when I went to college, people came up to her and were like, you're out of your mind. She's so sheltered. She's going to go off to this like worldly secular Satanist school. It was the University of Florida. And, it's going to be girls gone wild, and she's going to go crazy and like all this stuff. And it didn't fucking happen. The craziest thing I did in undergrad, we didn't drink until we turned 21, me and my roommate. And we hid the Harry Potter books in our bedroom. Like that was, that was rebellion.
This girl that I kind of liked, we liked each other. We weren't dating, but we kind of liked each other. She would bring the last Harry Potter book to church, and she would read it without the cover on because it looked like a Bible. So she'd be in the pews, and I was just like, I was not approving of that at all, but she'd be reading it in the pews. Oh
my God,
like a Bible.
Where is she? Can we be best friends?
Queen. No, we haven't talked in years. But because she was just like, I gotta find out what happens. But so were you quite like, were you yourself, like you going to this Girls Gone Wild kind of school? When you kind of like, well, so they say, were you worried? Did you think that you needed to like protect yourself? Were you quite pure, like, or were you like secretly like, hooking up with people in 5th grade?
Oh God,
like,
no.
what was the?
Absolutely not.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I was the good girl. I did not like to be told what to wear. Like it's Florida. It's 105 degrees. Like I'm gonna wear a short whatever. I'd wear 2-piece bathing suits, and my parents always let me. And that was like the scandal of the town, like that I would wear a 2-piece bathing suit. But like when I went to college, like no, I was very much indoctrinated. I was very much like, Didn't drink until I was 21. My family like drank alcohol. So like when I turned 21, I was like, I'm allowed to drink. I was like, Jesus like literally fucking made wine. So like, I'm gonna drink.
I love your voice. The voice you put on. So, oh my God.
And so like, but I didn't date. And my roommate was a girl who'd gone to the private Christian school with me since in kindergarten. She was also like equally indoctrinated. Her parents were even more strict than mine were in some ways. She was allowed to date though. And then we immediately found like a church to go to for like freshman, sophomore year. And that one was like a very Pentecostal church. Like that one was, we went to one Sunday service because usually we would just go to like the like Friday night, like college age service. But we went to like one Sunday service where they were literally like bopping you on the forehead, being like, Lord, like the Holy Spirit, love. And I was just like, not for me. But like, you know, I saw it was there. And, you know, and I didn't think that it was wrong because I was just like, you know, I was taught that like,
they're all different branches of the tree of life.
You could be healed. You could speak in tongues. Like I was taught that these things could happen. And so I don't know. So no, very much indoctrinated, very much straight laced. When senior year, my degree got much more difficult and I spent much more time like on the school stuff. And like, I kind of stopped going to that church as much. But I would go out and I would drink and we would go to the bars and things, but like, I didn't have my first kiss until I was like 21 maybe. And that was basically just like, I'm doing it.
That's great. Did you're married now, right? And part of your deconstruction happened while...
Yeah, I married my first boyfriend. So no, I'm not Girls Gone Wild.
Okay, that's great. So did you guys have like a, not to get too personal, but do you guys have like a pretty traditional Christian relationship? Like, did you kind of take things quite slowly and like when you eventually did start having sex, was it a weird navigation because of like how the purity culture kind of affected you and things like that?
I like told him from the beginning. And that was like a big thing for me was that like, you know, I had to be like, I had to be very upfront, like from the beginning. I was just like, you know, like, I don't believe in sex before marriage. Like, you know, I'm not like, we would like make out and stuff, but I was like, I can't do it. Like, I can't do anything. And like, I thought that, you know, he would not, because he wasn't an evangelical, he wasn't a fundamentalist. And, you know, I thought that like most of the time, like, guys are not going to be interested in like that unless they're from that belief system. So I think I tricked him for long enough into thinking that I was normal that he couldn't escape. So, so no, but like the purity culture thing, like super fucked me up. And I'm still probably like dealing with like a lot of stuff from that. And since deconstructing, I really haven't like dealt with like I didn't deal with it until really I deconstructed and stuff. And so reading books like Jesus and John Wayne, obviously that's like the ex-evangelical Bible, and like #Church2 and like these stories of like how, because I believed up until probably like 28, 29 years old until 2020 in the conspiracy theory stuff. I believed that purity culture was a good thing and that was like the right thing to do. And it wasn't until you really look into it that you find out that like, no, it is riddled with like sexual abuse and physical, like spousal abuse and just like all of the worst things possible. So yeah, no, it was, I was very much in it basically.
Yeah. So a bit of my story is I had slept with my high school girlfriend and one other person, but only a handful of times. And then, yeah. And then when my wife and I married, like she was a virgin on our wedding night. And when we married, when we started having sex and stuff, I would have tremendous anxiety leading up to having sex and after having sex for 9 times out of 10. And I was like, what's going on here? Like it took years, even now a little bit, but it took like it's been 10 years, but like it was I came down to purity culture. Like for so long, sex was always associated with shame or guilt, or not sex, but like lustful thoughts, masturbation, things like that were all connected with guilt. And so now when and also it was a very like shameful private space. And now that I'm introducing a second party into this, now it's like how do you navigate this thing? It was I really think purity culture like fucked me up. Don't recommend it.
A lot of people focus on like how it affected women because like, you know, in patriarchy we were definitely like the targets, but like it fucked men up too. And
oh yeah,
there's such a like the quote at one of the ends of the episodes of the Shiny Happy People documentary where the guy is like you know, it forced men to be tiny household gods. And like that was something I was like, that's it. Because, you know, you were given so much shame and guilt and stuff as well. But then also told that like, you know, you have to like perform on like this level and you have to be like this figure in the home that is, you know, and you're an island. And now they're, you know, they're talking about an epidemic of male loneliness and like all this stuff that like the patriarchy has literally just created. And I think, and then this is like a hot take, but like, when you look at like the Josh Duggars of the world, who were raised in these, highly fundamentalist groups, and you're told like, don't think about your sister's boobs, don't think about your sister's boobs, like what are you gonna do, you know? Like you're gonna think about your sister's boobs. And so like you know, I feel like it's almost creating these predators. And there are stories from when I look back on my childhood, I didn't realize like how abusive and how toxic some of the situations had been. But then when I look back, I was like, oh my God, I saw that growing up. Oh my God, I saw that growing up. There was a girl who was, my friend went to like one of these IBLB camps, and this girl was like 18 or 19 years old, because we were 18 or 19 years old. And she had confided in my friend that her to-be husband, and she said, God told me he's my husband, so I have to marry him, had been having sexual relations with things on his farm. And she was having to reconcile herself to having to marry him. She had never held a boy's hand because she had been told that like her value as a human being rested in her purity, but she needed to reconcile like with the idea of marrying a man who had done these things, and like the double standard, and like the just like it sets you up when you have absolutely no sexual education and like or no education at all, when you're talking about some of these homeschooled groups. You know, it sets you up to like be basically like fucked up.
We're gonna do something right now, and I'm gonna get you to participate, and everyone else in the comments to participate. Okay, I'm gonna start a timer on my phone for 30 seconds. Okay, and in that 30 seconds, I want everyone to like close their eyes or try or whatever, become in a non-destructive environment, and you're going to spend all of your attention trying not to think of a pink elephant. Okay. We're gonna do this for 30 seconds, okay? And I'll count us down, and I want you to count every time your mind thinks of a pink elephant. All right, and we're gonna do that for 30 seconds. So I won't do it because I'm doing this, but everyone else can try, and then comment how many times you thought of a pink elephant. So we're gonna do this in 30 seconds in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, that's 30 seconds. How'd you go?
I'm pretty sure that I just thought about a pink elephant the entire time.
yeah, okay. Yeah. So everyone comment how many times you thought of a pink elephant. I want to see this.
Yeah.
3. Wow, that's not bad. 15. Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. I did this with my psychologist. And 2, 6. Okay. Just one time because I thought pink elephant. Once for 30 seconds, 5. Yeah, not bad. Not bad.
Once for 30 seconds. That's me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. So just quickly, can you tell us about how did you meet your partner?
Tinder. I'm also dating myself with Tinder because now I know it's Hinge, but back then it was Tinder. So
yeah, right. And so do you remember the first conversation you had with him?
No, that's so sad. I don't really remember. It was very typical. It was very flirty. But I made it very obvious that and I was on Tinder basically to meet people because I was also very busy with like my degree and stuff, and it's a very small department, so it's not like I met a ton of people. But I made it very obvious when I was on Tinder that like I'm not using this as like a hookup app. I'm using this like a dating app, and so like that's and back then a lot of people were using it as just a dating app as well. So it worked out, but.
Well, I did actually want to know about that, but in the last 30 seconds, how many times do you think about the pink elephant?
I didn't actually.
Yeah, exactly right. So it's interesting, but I think that is a huge part of the purity culture and everything to do with blasphemous thoughts or thoughts that are bad. The more you try and push them down, the bigger and stronger they grow. It's a huge problem. I think that's within Christianity. So
and that's a line that I have in my book somewhere where it's like the hyperfixation on the suppression of sexuality is still a fixation on like sex and sexuality. It like you're still thinking and talking about it like literally nonstop. And like I literally think that they preached purity to us more than they preached the gospel. After I hit like 10 years old or whatever, every single sermon and every single weekend, especially when it was like an all girls group, it was about purity. So it's all they think and talk about, and it's all fear-based.
So do you remember the moment where you started getting these invitations into the QAnon circle, when you started, not as an elite, but when you started to notice that it was a real problem? Because you went through university, you got a degree. What university is really good for is teaching how to think. You can't just like write a paper on something and be like, oh yeah, this is my idea. You've got to like instantiate every single thing that you're saying. You got to have references all throughout your papers. So it teaches you that you need to like, I guess, have like a worldview, a thought, an idea, and you need to like, how do you justify that idea? And it goes right, but you can even go right back to like, how do I justify my existence, me, my brain? I think, therefore I am. Like, it gets really philosophical if you go deep enough. So how you have this education? How did you go from having this education to people coming up to you trying to tell you about 5G and its negative effects as a nuclear engineer? How does that happen? And
it's rude. And basically my degree, because I did some like dual enrollment classes in high school and stuff. So I didn't have to take some of like, I took some of the like humanities and social science classes at the community college before I transferred. So maybe it would have been a little bit different, but I don't really think that it was, because I still had a STEM degree. I had an engineering degree. So most of my stuff was focused on like physics and calculus and, like the nuclear stuff. So I wasn't taking a lot of philosophy classes. I didn't take any political science or like sociology classes. Like I had the most rudimentary level of knowledge on any of those subjects. Like really good at math, and that's all I got. And so like it didn't do a lot to shake my indoctrination because of the degree that I was in. And when I talk to my parents now, I get the classic Fox News like talking point of my dad said this to me, and this upset me like so greatly, because my brother, my mom, my dad, all of them at one point or another, so I know that they're all talking about this together, have told me that I've been brainwashed by higher education. And my dad told me that if we had to do it over again, we wouldn't send you to that school, being the University of Florida. And again, I have a degree in engineering. I'm not like I wasn't brainwashed into anything. And I was like, calculus does not turn you into a communist or a homosexual. Like there's like, it's not happening.
Those commie homosexuals. Yeah.
Yeah, the calculus to like commie pipeline is unreal. But so, and like for me, they had told me my whole life growing up, like education was like such a big deal. And it was like, you need to get an education, you need to get straight A's, you need to do the best you can. And like, for me, it was part of like making my family proud that like I would try to do as best as I could. And then for me to have finished all of that, and then for them to immediately turn around and spit on all of my accomplishments and say, like, if we had to do it over again, we wouldn't send you to that school, is just so profoundly disrespectful. But basically, I made it through the whole thing, like totally indoctrinated. I didn't question a thing. And it wasn't until 2020 where like, and I recognized growing up, like high school on, I feel like my family got much more radical on the political side of things, much more like hyper Republican. And it was because it was around the time that I went into high school that Obama became the president. And so they got like super racist about Obama. And they, he's secretly a Muslim and he's trying to like infiltrate the country from the highest levels in order to undermine our Judeo-Christian country and like all this stuff. And, and I reckon like, and they said that like, oh, he wasn't born in the US, he was born in Kenya or whatever. And I was completely politically unengaged, did not know anything. And I'm like, a ninth grader. And, I just remember saying like, well, I don't know, like my parents said that he wasn't even born here. And I didn't get into political debates or anything because I didn't know anything, but like my parents said that stuff. And so I generally kind of believed them. But as I got older, I was like, no, Obama's not a secret Muslim. Like, I don't think so. And then like, as I got older, there were other things where they started getting a lot more guns. They started, like basically preparing for the apocalypse. Like they had, like they have 5 acres. They thought that they were going to have to like farm their land when like Obama like established some sort of like communist dictatorship. They had like buckets of seeds and things. I knew one family from that Pentecostal church that I went to in undergrad that had an actual underground bunker. And so like that stuff, I was like, okay, no, this is crazy. And then like, they had some conspiracy theories about like the Fukushima nuclear reactor accident in like 2011 or whatever. Meanwhile, I'm in school for nuclear engineering and they don't ask me about it at all. They just like, they're running around a farmer's market telling everybody that we're about to like walk into a nuclear famine. And I'm just like, no, like chasing them around. Like, and so like that kind of stuff, I was like, that's a conspiracy theory. Like that's not true. And then, but like, I have
the same feeling with my like flat earth family. I'm like, I measure the earth, right? Like, like, you know what I mean? Like it's so frustrating because it's like we have to like, there was this wild thing that happened in surveying for a while, right? Where all our coordinate systems went off because there was a wiggle in the Earth's orbit. And they were like, what the fuck? Like, why is like every GPS system around the world just screwing up? And it was because China had built a dam so big that it put a wobble in the Earth's orbit. And we had to then put algorithms in we had to like change the algorithms to compensate for the wiggle that was in the orbit of the Earth.
Don't put this on YouTube because you're spawning new conspiracy theories. I can feel them.
But like, we're talking like, you're talking millimeters. You're talking, 1/500th of an inch or whatever you guys, or 4/20th of a small elephant, like whatever you guys use over in America. But for measurements,
all I'm hearing is that China is trying to wobble us into communism. All right.
Yeah, that's it. No, but it wasn't a big deal. It was just like everyone was like confused why everything was a little off, like a few seconds off. It's wild. And something else I just kind of want to touch on is we've had people recently tell us, friends and family tell us that the end of the world is coming. It was meant to happen a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, okay. And we watched a few of their videos to try and, we've got to prepare. I missed the end of the world that was going to happen in COVID. So, I want to make sure I get this end of the world. At least I get to attend. And the videos were, and I'm sorry, this is going to offend, it might offend you, it might offend the American audience, but there is this obsession with the conspiracy people in America, these conspiracy Christians who believe the end is coming, that America plays this like phenomenal role in everything. It's wild to me. Like they'll say, I think one of the justifications was because Trump moved the embassy from Jerusalem to something like in Israel, Palestine. I can't remember. He like moved it back to the Israeli side. Like, I can't really remember. But because that happened, that was the equivalent of like a Messiah being like coming, or like it was the equivalent of like this big thing. And I was like, America, like you're not that important. Like I understand, like 13% of the world doesn't even speak English. I mean, sorry, 13% of the world speaks English. What is it? 87% of the world doesn't even speak English. Like you couldn't communicate with half the world. Like that's wild. Like we have this, and even Australia's the same. Like we see America as like this the kind of the grandfather of Australia. We kind of copy everything you guys do, and we see things from a very Australian perspective. But again, we're such a small chunk of the world. Like this doesn't matter. Like we're not. It's not like like Trump says something, and then therefore it's like gospel. Like therefore it's fact. Therefore like the Messiah is returned, or it's just wild. Anyway, continue.
Yeah, it's so. It's just like overwhelmingly like, I don't know, narcissistic or like egotistical.
Yeah.
Like that. It's just so dumb. It's just dumb.
Yeah. The whole Israel thing is narcissistic as well. Like, why did God choose one group of people and put them in one part of the world, a crap part of the world, if you ask me, like in regards to like what's going on there at the moment? But like, why would God do that? Like, it just
seems like the Mormons believe the same thing. Like, literally every single group thinks that like they're God's special boy. But I don't know. So basically, the point was that I was fully indoctrinated, fully on board. I did not like certain things, but I had not thought about them. I had not thought deeply about anything. I had not questioned anything. I was not I was not a skeptic. I was not like, oh, I had like my doubts and things. Like, no. I was pretty much like, I wasn't going to church. Like occasionally I would force my husband, who grew up Catholic, to go to a evangelical church, like trying to find a church home here. And like, I just never liked them. I never fit in. And I always thought that it was just because I was like an engineer, because I'm not like one of those like, oh my God, I love you. Like when you walk into a new church, like the pastor's daughter, like love bombs you. And like, that's always rubbed me the wrong way. And I thought that it was like, because I was like, an engineer, but like, I think that maybe that was kind of like my subconscious being like, this isn't right. That's love bombing. That's literally like a cult tactic. But I was still fairly indoctrinated. And then 2020 happened. I had seen some conspiracy theories and things growing up. But for the most part, I just believed that it was my parents, they're old people. If they believe some crazy things, like it doesn't really matter. Or like, if it's a political thing, like they just know something that I don't, because I don't know anything about politics. So like either it doesn't matter or they know more than I do. And then 2020 happened, and my best friend, we'll call her Kathy, that bitch. Kathy is the one who like taught English in Taiwan with IBLP, who had the Bill Gothard VHS tapes, who I met at that like speaking in tongues, like Girls on Fire for Jesus event. Like Kathy's been my best friend since we were 12. Like literally, like she was family to me. And she was driving through town during the pandemic. So it was July of the 2020, July of 2020. during the first big spike, the summer spike of the virus here in the US. And we did not have vaccines, and people really didn't know what was going on. It was during like one of the first big like shutdowns and stuff. And I was an essential worker, so I was still having to go into work and stuff. She had been planning to stay with us for like a night or two since before the pandemic. And I told her, I was like, look, you can still stay with us if you want, because you need a free place to stay. But please like understand that like I'm potentially exposed at work. So like if you're not comfortable with that, I understand. And typically when people come to visit, we do like the whole touristy thing. We go out to all the restaurants and we see all the tourist attractions and stuff. But like obviously there's a panorama going on, and we're going to have to, we're not going to be able to do any of that. And so she comes and she stays. She gets out of her car. The very first thing that she says to me is, do I need a face mask? And I was like, yeah. Like it was a weird question. And at this time, and it's really difficult to fathom now, I didn't know what QAnon was. We didn't know that there was going to be a massive anti-vax movement or a massive anti-vax movement. And like, so it was just a weird comment at the time. And so I was like, yeah, you need a face mask. And she was like, oh, haha, this is the first time I've ever worn a face mask. And it was in July. And I was just like, okay, that's weird. And then we go inside, and she spends the rest of the weekend making fun of us for taking COVID seriously. And like her best friend, who was a girl that I had met one time, she met her teaching English in Taiwan with IBLP. So this was a girl who was in that sphere as well. But her family was more deeply involved in IBLP. And she had been posting all weekend on Instagram all of these crazy like memes, like pastel QAnon memes about child sex trafficking and how face masks are child abuse and face masks are slavery, and talking about like pedophilia for some reason, and Donald Trump and 5G radiation and patriots. And like none of these words meant anything to me at the time because we didn't know what QAnon was. And, I told my friend, Kathy, I was just like, yo, like, have you seen your friend's Instagram? Like, she's gone off the deep end. Like, those were my words. I was like, she's gone off the deep end. And she just like, Kathy was like, not bothered. She was just like, I don't know. And she was like, oh, you don't believe in any conspiracy theories? And I was just like, what does that mean? Like, was there a second shooter on the grassy knoll? Like, I don't know. And, so it was just weird. And then the very next day, like she leaves. The next day, she sends me a voice message that literally changed my life. And like this is the beginning of the end for me, because she sent me a voice message that said, oh, hey, like, because we've been talking about conspiracy theories, I thought that you might think that this is interesting. My best friend at this church that she went to in our hometown, and it was very much more of like a Pentecostal church, like very much more like laying of hands and healing and things. My best friend at this church that I go to told me that when the vaccines come out, they're going to be full of secret metal, and that the metal in your blood is then going to interact with 5G radiation in order to control your mind and make you vote Democrat or kill you. She wasn't sure which one. And
make you see, even then it's like, why is like, this is a global vaccine, like, but why is it gonna make you vote? Like,
5G radiation, like, what are you talking about? 2, mind control, like just all of this, just like whatever. And so like she tells me this and I'm like, oh my God, that's so funny. Like your friend found this thing on like 4chan or some crazy website, and like it's like a funny story. And she was like, no, she believes this. And I lost my shit. I'm texting her, and it's a text like this is almost verbatim. I was like, you need to question all of your life choices for tolerating the existence of this person, let alone being friends with them. And if anybody that you know other than me says the word radiation to you, you need to slap them and walk away. And then I called her friend a smooth brain. And then Kathy, this bitch, has the audacity to be offended by that. Her only response, I listened like this whole thing, and she was like, I think that's a bit harsh. And I was like, I don't think that you get to tell me that 5G radiation is going to control my mind and expect me not to react with violence. Like, we've met before. Like, what are you talking about? And so like at this point, I am now concerned. Now I'm worried. Now I'm paying attention because Kathy is my age. She's not my boomer uncle. She's not my
Yeah, I
parent.
know what you mean. Yeah.
She's 27, 28 at the time, gorgeous. She's batshit crazy, but she possesses the grace of a flower in the wind. And so she's like, I now start paying attention. I'm watching what she's posting. I'm watching what her friend from IBLP is posting. And at the same time, I'm now starting to get messages from just random people. Like my other friend's mom was like sending me stuff. My mom was sending me stuff. I was seeing people posting things on Facebook. My friend's mom sent me a video. It was like, I don't know who it was, but it was a pastor somewhere in Georgia who was at a pulpit talking about George Soros and Bill Gates and literally QAnon, like literally talking about a cabal from the pulpit. And I didn't know what that meant at the time. I didn't know what QAnon was. And I was like, I don't think I replied. I was like, that's crazy. And then my mom starts sending me videos from Simone Gold and Judy Mikovits. So these names are like hyper triggering for me, but you probably don't know who they are.
No, I don't know.
So Judy Mikovits is the woman who was like the star interviewee for the Plandemic documentary. So in the rise of QAnon, with the pandemic, so basically like 2020 was like the worst year ever for QAnon because of three things. One, you had the pandemic, so that like massively soft pilled a bunch of people into conspiracy theory, anti-vax like propaganda, and then that pushed them down the rabbit hole into other conspiracy theories. That was at the beginning of 2020. Then in the summer of 2020, you had pastel QAnon. You had the Wayfair shipping conspiracy theory and like all of these child sex trafficking, misinformation, conspiracy theories. And then at the end of 2020, you had the voter fraud. You had the Donald Trump, Joe Biden, like election voter fraud conspiracy theories. And so it was just like bam, bam, bam. And it like rapidly took everybody into this like just alternate information media space. And basically, one of the big things that really launched the anti-vax movement was this documentary called Plandemic. And one of the people in it was this doctor, Judy Mikovits, who had worked with Fauci in some of his, like, she was like a research scientist, like a doctor research scientist, and she had actually done some like good work or whatever. But and it's very similar to the origin story of Andrew Wakefield, who was like the OG like 1995 anti-vax movement guy. They had a study. They thought that they had solved something super incredible, like connecting autism to vaccines, or in her case, connecting autism to like this other virus. And then they published a paper, and it got debunked. The peer review process worked. They like had counter studies, and they were like, no, we think that it was like lab contamination, or we think that like there was some sort of scientific flaw. And it got debunked. And normally you move on and be like, oh, okay. But Judy Mikovits was like, no, I'm being persecuted. She was also like a hyper evangelical, talking about like, like she goes on all these like Christian podcasts and things. I've listened to other interviews with her where she said that if you wear a face mask, you'll activate the virus. If you ride in an airplane, you'll get radiation poisoning. Why is everybody obsessed with radiation? I don't know. If you get the flu vaccine, you'll die within 10 minutes. And these are like easily disprovable things. But like, this is the stuff my mom is sending me. And I'm like, oh my God. And then Simone Gold is like, the worst. She started the America's Frontline Doctors Association, AFLDS, something like that. And very famous. I want to say in 2020, 2021, this doctors association, all wearing like white trench coats, stood on like the steps of the Capitol or something and had a press conference where they said that, you don't need the vaccine. Hydroxychloroquine is the secret cure to the pandemic, and the government is hiding this from you because they want you to use their vaccine. Conveniently, AFLDS was selling hydroxychloroquine, which is an antiviral malaria drug and again, there was one research paper that said, hey, we think this might help with COVID. And then it got debunked, and it has been proven that it does absolutely nothing for COVID. So my family
Trump was big on that as well, right?
Trump was big on that as well.
And then
Oh my God.
as soon as he got taken to the hospital, he was pumped with so much hydro. Oh no, wait, he wasn't. He got none.
He had the other thing that like I think actually works, but the AFLDS with Simone Gold. Simone Gold went to prison for storming the Capitol on January 6th. Speed to the end there. But AFLDS, all the other doctors that were a part of this group were like chiropractors.
Yeah.
And like
people who worst.
But they weren't like medical doctors or people who had expired medical licenses. Or there was one woman who was a part of AFLDS who was she was a medical doctor, but she was also a preacher who taught that disease was not caused by viruses and germs. It was caused by having sex with demons in your sleep. Okay.
Demon semen. I remember that one.
Right. Like the succubus demon stuff. So, and super upsetting. I had heard that before, as a kid, but, that's a woman who's in AFLDS. That is the organization that my mother is sending me videos from. Also, Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, puts a guy who was in AFLDS as the Surgeon General for the state of Florida to make all of the COVID decisions. So like everything's fucked. And so she's sending me these videos. My friend's mom is sending me Bill Gates, George Soros sermons. My friend Kathy is like reposting her friends' like nonsense. They were very big into photo fraud and stuff. And my family is now stockpiling hydroxychloroquine and vitamin D because they don't think that they need the vaccine anymore. My father has one lung and is over 65 years old and is a cancer survivor. And I'm in a different state. My family's doing a bunch of crazy ass shit and I don't know what to do about it. And as the pandemic progresses or whatever, I figure out what QAnon is and I can put a language to it and I can explain like what things are. And so I go to Kathy and I'm like, I understand now. All right. So like, I know what your friend is talking about. It's all QAnon. And there's pages long of text messages. And I literally say to her, they think Hillary Clinton is eating babies, LOL, thinking that would like incite some kind of reaction. And it's exactly like what you said when you were talking to like your flat earth family, where it's just like a deadpan, because she would send me like one-line responses and just like refuse to engage in a conversation at all. And when I told her that like, the sex trafficking conspiracy, like Hillary Clinton's not eating babies, her response was, I can't believe you don't believe in sex trafficking. I've been to Cambodia. And I was like, bitch, this is a text message. You can literally just reread it. Okay. Your reading comprehension is obviously not your strong suit.
Smooth brain.
There's no wrinkles. And
do you notice that when you do talk to people who are very conspiratorial, they'll be like, trees grow upside down, and you'll be like, why do you think trees grow upside down? And they'll tell you, and you'll be like, oh, and you'll start to question it, and you'll get to the point where you've kind of debunked it, essentially. Like they've got nothing else to go to, and they've got to now admit that maybe they don't have a good reason to believe that trees grow upside down, whatever. And then they'll go, and then as soon as you're at that point, they'll go, yeah, but the leaves reflect the sun. The sun is actually giving us radiation. And you go, oh, okay. And you move on to that one, and then you talk about that for a little bit. And it's like this Venn diagram of like 100,000 things that as soon as you like question them enough on one subject, like if someone's willing to have the conversation with you, they'll just pivot. You can never like get them to just talk about one thing, follow the evidence where it leads. And what I think it's got to do with like outrage culture. Like people watch Fox News and they're mad about transgenderism or transgender. I said that as a joke. I was meant to say, I say the gays. They're mad about the gays, or the transgenders.
Homosexual agenda.
And they're mad about all that stuff and maybe racist or whatever. And they watch Fox News and it ignites their anger, and they continue to, I really feel like things like Fox News are just like rotting people's brains. It's not just the right, by the way. It's the left has their own equivalencies. I don't really know them. I don't really watch mainstream media, but
but it's not on the same level. Like you can't equate them. It's not like the corruption exists everywhere, misinformation exists everywhere, but like we're comparing apples and oranges. But the
Apples to
thing,
nuclear bombs.
yeah, literally, like not even the same.
Yeah.
But once like all of that started happening, we were now engaged. Like the weekend after Kathy visited, my husband proposed. We were now planning the wedding. The first thing I did was ask all my bridesmaids to be in the wedding, because that was like one of the things I was most excited about, was to get to see people from like all these different places who lived all over the country again to be my bridesmaids. Kathy was a bridesmaid. Kathy was the unofficial maid of honor. And over the next several months, we had all of these conversations where she, she's just like refusing the vaccine. She said that the vaccine causes infertility. And I was like, can you send me the article on that? And she like sent me an article that was just talking about side effects that had nothing to do with infertility. I was like, you're like you can't think good. And, and I was just beating my head against a brick wall with her. And then once I figured out what QAnon was, I went to all of my other so I had 3 bridesmaids from my hometown, and I went to all 3 of them. And Kathy just like completely shut me down, would not have a conversation. The other 2, I was like, look, this is what QAnon is. I don't know why it's all of the white evangelicals who are falling for this stuff, but you're going to start to see it because our whole town is nothing but white evangelicals. You're going to see it. I want to pre-warn you. And one of my bridesmaids had already like heard about some of the stuff and was like, she believed the Wayfair shipping conspiracy. And I was just, her mother-in-law had told her about Wayfair shipping children. And I was just like, no, they're not. It's a conspiracy theory. And she listened to me, but then she was like, well, I saw this other video that like Oprah Winfrey is a pedophile. And I watched that video and I was like, no, she's not. That's a conspiracy theory. And she listened to me about those things, but I was the only person in her life who was saying no. Everybody, her mother, her mother-in-law, her husband, her sister-in-law, literally every single other person who were very important to her was like telling her these crazy things. And I'm the only person who's saying no, and it wasn't enough. And then my other bridesmaid, I went to her with the same thing, and she was just like, oh, I already know all about this. My aunt, who is a woman that I have known my entire life, already told me about all of this. We can't get her off the computer. She has gone hard-pilled QAnon. So her adult children like cannot get her to leave the house because she's doing her own research all the time. She told me that that all of the hurricanes that hit Florida in 2020, and it's Florida, so we always have hurricanes. All the hurricanes that hit Florida in 2020 were man-made by Jewish space lasers with the intent of sinking the state of Florida because DeSantis had given them too much freedom. And, I thought the 5G radiation thing was the craziest thing I'd ever heard in my life. Now we're talking about Jewish space lasers. I had barely scratched the surface. I had talked to 2 people in my hometown and immediately found the most feral anti-Semitism that I had ever heard in my entire life. And it was terrifying. And my bridesmaid didn't believe any of that. She was like, oh yeah, my aunt is crazy. But she didn't understand this, she didn't understand how significant it was and like how scary it was that like that level of anti-Semitism and for it to be normalized like that. And so and I went to my parents and I had the same conversation with them, and they just like wouldn't listen to me because I'm a child and like they're the adult and like they don't have to listen to me. And the other thing was just kind of like, oh, that's just Cynane with her like weird engineer nerd shit. Like she's talking about 8chan and like things that they couldn't understand. And so I got nowhere. And then and we were planning the wedding throughout all of this. Eventually, I had to just uninvite Kathy. I was like, please do not show up. And she was very gracious about accepting that. So like, I'll give her that, but we haven't spoken since. And she was my best friend, like literally my best friend. And then, sorry. And so, and things with my family got really bad because we ended up timing the wedding at the very perfect point of the lowest, like Delta was at its lowest point. It was before Omicron had taken off. At the time, we thought that the vaccines were like 98% effective. And, so we felt comfortable having the wedding. It was all outdoors. Everybody was going to be vaccinated anyway, except for like the one table from my hometown. And I told and everybody was under 30. Everybody, like none of our older relatives were coming. My husband's parents were vaccinated. And I told my parents that, like, because my dad has one lung, I was like, I can't live with myself if, like, I know that the chances are very low. I know that the chances are low. But if dad gets sick and something happens to him, just so that I can throw a party when, like, there are precautions that we could take and we didn't take, I will never be able to live with myself. And so I basically had to give them an ultimatum. I was like, we're not requiring everybody who attends to get the vaccine, because like 98% are already vaccinated. But we are requiring that you get vaccinated. And my mom told me to elope. She was just like, well, then you should just elope, just cancel the wedding. And I was like, no. And my dad spent 3 days in talking her into getting the vaccine, which she still bitches about. And I'm sorry for like trying to save your life. And
did she got it? Did she get 5G? Or like, did she get the 5G booster?
I mean, they are magnetic now. So
I actually, when I went to get mine, I said like, they said, "Oh, how you going?" I'm like, "Good. I'm just really excited to get better reception." Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, "Oh, my 5G and my phone's been crap. I heard that when I get this, I'll have like really good reception." She laughed.
God. Yeah. So, I mean, if only. But and I mean, honestly, if anybody does have space lasers, like, use them, you know. But
please, yeah.
If we could sink the state of Florida, I endorse it. But
no, we got to get Robin Faith Welsh out of there. She's in Miami. Is Miami in Florida?
Miami is in Florida. You know what? Let's save Miami. I love Miami.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
So, you know, like, it was awful. And like, you know, instead of like worrying about like the budget or the color of the spoons or like how we fold the napkins and like all the normal wedding stress, I'm now worried that like somebody's going to start talking about Jewish space lasers to my in-laws who are normal people. And so like, it was awful. It was awful. And I basically just tried to like push through it to the end. It got to a point where we should have eloped, but we didn't know that it was going to be that bad. It got to the point where it's just like, don't burn down every bridge, just like push through to the end of the wedding, you know, except for Kathy, you know, like, fuck that. Like, that bridge was burnt, but everybody else was just like, I just kept thinking that like, I must be wrong. Like, it cannot possibly be this bad. I just must not understand. Don't overreact. And then like, we got through the wedding. I had like about 2 months to decompress. And then I was like, no. I'm right about everything. And like, fuck everyone. And basically what happened was, it's so sad because my sister-in-law, she had like a new baby and they had just bought this new house. And we all went to my husband's side of the family for Christmas that year. And it was like baby's first Christmas. And it was lovely. It was lovely. I'm having a mental breakdown. But like trying not to like show it too much. But on the 23rd, I got a text message from my friend from undergrad. And on the 24th, so Christmas Eve, I got a text message from a friend from work. These people do not know each other. And I swear to God, it was almost verbatim the same text message. They both said, "Help, I'm home for Christmas and my dad is saying some crazy QAnon shit. What do I do?" And because they knew that I knew everything about QAnon at this point. And I was just like, you're fucked. I'm so sorry. I have been dealing with this for 2 years and I have not been successful. I don't know what to tell you. I can tell you what's going on, but I can't tell you what to do about it. I can send you some resources. And it basically, like, I knew that QAnon and these conspiracy theories and the anti-vax stuff was, I knew that it was not just of my family problem, not just of my hometown problem. I knew that this was a bigger problem, but for me to face it, seeing it affect other people that I loved and respected, who didn't deserve to have to deal with it, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I felt a physical snap, and at that moment, I deconstructed.
Wow.
And I was just like, I was like, it is because they are Christians. that they believe this stuff, and I'm a Christian. So what does that say? What is wrong with evangelicalism that it is promoting these ideas and this hatred and this like just literal insanity? Like, you know, my friend's dad was like saying he was vaccinated, and then he was saying that the booster shot was the mark of the beast, you know, just like insane. And
I get so triggered by the mark of the beast because like if you know anything about the Bible, like the mark of the beast was Nero, and it was like clearly like it's clearly like it's not for people reading, they have to read Revelations into this time, but it's not like it's like Jesus was supposed to come back in his disciples' lifetime. That's like verbatim written there in three of the four gospels. Like, you know, like it's a failed prophecy in my opinion.
Well,
so it's like,
and that's what I had to deconstruct. Like I said earlier, I had to deconstruct American exceptionalism and biblical inerrancy, and a part of that was because the end times rhetoric was so huge for me growing up. My mom told me that like because Israel had been like reestablished in like 1948 or whatever, but it meant that like her generation was like Jesus was going to come back in her lifetime, and I needed to be ready for the rapture at any moment. So like that was such a big part of like Christianity for me, and it's a huge part of the absolutism of evangelicalism, hell, and then like, you know, the end time stuff, that like the slightest amount of biblical study, like studying the Bible from outside the propaganda of evangelicalism, from like an actual academic standpoint, you immediately dismantle all of that. And so like that was a huge thing for me. But you know, and so like I said earlier, like I had to read books about theology, and I swear I feel so stupid and I feel tricked because, you know, the absolutism around evangelicalism is this idea of hell and this idea of penal substitutionary atonement, that Jesus died as a sacrifice for your sins. I was never taught that there were other versions of Christianity, that there were other atonement theories, that the rapture was not the only story that you could possibly interpret out of the Bible. I was taught that there was one interpretation. And so like, that was huge for me.
That's something that we should. We're running out of time, but that's something that we should bring up. Is this? It's not all evangelicals, and it's especially not all Christians. Like a lot of Christians, most Christians are probably very normal, but it's even white evangelical Christians, or just evangelicalism in general, lends itself to this kind of stuff because you've got this. We'll talk about this in DMs when we're preparing for this interview, but it's the idea. It's like when you have to when you have to believe that evolution is a lie and science can lie then, and science can lie about the Big Bang Theory. What else is science lying about, and why are they lying about it? Why are they trying to fool everyone? So you like it lends itself. The thinking lends itself to conspiracy theories, as well as like the end of the world and the one world government and all that kind of stuff. It's like none of this is actually happening. Evolution is a fact. Big Bang Theory is a fact. Well, as far as like it's the best known theory, the best theory we have, and like, but none of this like one world like government or the end of the apocalypse or the coming Messiah or any of that stuff is happening. So they need to like find the evidence for it, and they find evidence for it in these crazy ways where somehow Trump, a thrice married dude who fucks porn stars, is like the Christian
grabbing him by the pussy.
Grabbing him by the pussy. Like Trump has really got the Christian evangelicals right by the pussy. And it's like,
oh yeah. Oh, that's funny. But
thank you. I've been working on that for a while. It's I don't like to say that word, but like in a derogatory, but it's like it brings home the point. It's like this is the champion. Like I've talked to a Christian friend in the US. It's like, you don't have to vote, right? Like Jesus said clearly, give back to Caesar what is Caesar's. You see Caesar's face on that coin, give it back to him. Don't worry about the things of this world, essentially. And you have this huge majority of people who are like, you must vote Republican. They're killing babies and and it's just like you're voting for an immoral person. From it's wild. Well, and like honestly that like comes
that's kind of like where I landed with things, because deconstructing through the perspective of the conspiracy theories and like needing to understand that, I read a bunch of books by these cult psychologists. So like Dr. Robert J. Lifton is like the OG cult guy. Dr. Margaret Singer, Dr. Janja Lalich, Dr. Steve Hassan is very popular right now. He has a bunch of books out. I think he has one called The Cult of Trump, which I have not read yet, but I really need to. And so like some of these people were, they're like psychologists, psychiatrists, sociologists. Janja Lalich and Steve Hassan were ex-cult members who like broke out of the Moonies and some other political cult, and then like went into school to like study this stuff. And so what I found in the language I was able to apply to this was what Robert J. Lift, white Christian nationalism is the problem, right? Like if we need to put a label to it, it is white Christian nationalism. It is slightly distinct from white evangelicalism. There's a huge overlap, but it is kind of its own ideology, which is why they don't adhere, why there's so much hypocrisy to the evangelical scriptures, to Jesus's teachings, because they are evangelicals, but they're white Christian nationalists, and that overrides the evangelical ideology. And how some of these cults, a lot of experts don't like to use the word cult because it's been socially stigmatized and people like to just use it as a pejorative and it lost its meaning. But when I say cult, their definition is a charismatic leader, a transcendent belief system, a system of control, and a system of influence. And they have a totalistic ideology, which is an absolute worldview. And I like the word worldview because that was in the lexicon of the evangelicalism that I grew up in. It was a part of the Christianese that I grew up with. The private Christian school that I went to their website literally like a week ago, and they advertise instilling a Christian worldview or a biblical worldview. And so they're literally advertising that they will indoctrinate your child into a totalistic ideology for you. And what cults do, destructive cults, the traditional destructive cults that you think of when you think of like Jonestown or Heaven's Gate or these, mass suicide, mass murder sorts of situations, is that they have a totalistic ideology, an absolute worldview, and it could be based on anything. It could be based on politics or religion or flying saucers. Heaven's Gate was like an alien thing. And they center the veneration of this absolute worldview on the charismatic leader. But you can have a totalistic ideology without the charismatic leader. So, and I genuinely believe that we do not have sufficient language to explain what is going on, and that this has not been sufficiently studied, because psychology itself is a new field of study, and the study of cults is like almost non-existent. And white Christian nationalism is a totalistic ideology. It is an absolute worldview. You are told that you cannot study or look outside of this worldview. I was told that like Mormons and Islam and all of these other like cults or religions that were similar to Christianity. You can't deny that they are not similar in many ways. They were only similar because they were emulating the absolute truth that we had. So you should not study them. You should only study the truth. And so the absolute truth of this, absolute ends justify any means. And so when you have the absolute truth of hell, if you are literally justified to do anything if you are trying to save even one soul from eternal conscious torment. The absolute ends justify any means. And the absolute ends of abortion, if you're murdering babies, what are you not allowed to do to fight that, right? And so you have a totalistic ideology of white Christian nationalism. And Dr. Robert J. Lifton used the term personal closure. Dr. Janja Lalich uses the term bounded choice, which describes that like when you have a totalistic ideology, you close off part of reality. It's not one of your bounded choices. So you have to, so there's a quote from Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who's the guy that wrote Sherlock Holmes, where he says that once you have eliminated all of the impossible options, whatever's left, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. And when you have a totalistic ideology, you've got blinders on, you've removed a huge chunk of reality as impossible. And so, why did Trump pull out of the NATO, UN, international, whatever treaties? Why did Trump move the Israeli whatever to Jerusalem? Well, obviously that's a part of the end times rhetoric. Or like, why did Trump lose the 2020 election? The idea that the majority of Americans don't want to live in a homophobic theocracy, that's not an option. That's an impossibility. And so it must be because white evangelicals are not strong enough, or because there was some sort of satanic tampering. And so conspiracy theories become completely inevitable. They are foundational to the mentality of a totalistic ideology, because they are just a way of explaining phenomenon and events through the perspective of a totalistic ideology. And so you, like, of course, you're going to have these conspiracy theories when you have an absolute worldview. You're not using critical thinking. It shuts down critical thinking, and it shuts down empathy, because it is the same psychology as cults. Robert J. Lifton talks about his 8 characteristics of thought reform. And these are basically like how you manipulate somebody into adopting the totalistic ideology. And when you read his book, Thought Reform and the Psychology of Totalism, he like breaks down each of these. And I swear to God, I was like, I feel like I'm just reading an autobiography, because like Christianese is loading the language. That's one of the 8 characteristics of thought reform. It's a part of establishing an in-group and an out-group with language, and mystic manipulation. So like speaking in tongues, or like laying of hands and healing. And, if it's somebody who has a headache and then you you cure them, like you've just proven, that's mystic manipulation. And there's 8 characteristics. I can't rattle them all off, but
we had someone, sorry to interrupt, but we had someone cut off their neck brace at a prayer meeting. For a good friend of mine, cut off their neck and neck brace on their hip because they broke their neck.
That's very
and
upsetting.
Then someone like dug their knuckles into the broken bone to prove that it was healed and to prove that it wasn't hurting. And he was healed. He was fine for 3 days until he got rushed back to the emergency because his neck got an even worse break.
Oh my God. Oh,
and
my
we're
God.
all wondering, we're all like, what? I was thinking to myself, like, did he have like
God.
a sin in his life? Did he think like lustful thoughts that morning? And then like, he's like, yeah.
But, and then that's where you get into like so many of these like very dangerous things, because now you've got the medical misinformation and you're prioritizing this absolute worldview over actual information, medical information. And QAnon was so popular because it fit with the preconceived biases of white Christian nationalism, because it fed into the end times evangelical rhetoric, because it said, and the heart of white Christian nationalism, the conspiracy theory behind white Christian nationalism, it's not about conspiracy theories and cults. It's about totalistic ideologies and moral panics. It's something bigger than a conspiracy theory. And the moral panic behind white Christian nationalism is family values. And that's where you get purity culture. And that's where you get this like rabid homophobia and transphobia, because they're saying that like, oh, we need men to be men. It's a masculinity crisis. We need, women to be in the kitchen and to be like raising children. And that's, if we have strong families, we'll have a strong country. As a distraction from actual systemic issues, like, no, we don't, like, I mean, sure, like some of that might help, but like, we don't need like men to be men and to like strengthen patriarchy. We need to like figure out gerrymandering and the prison system and like racial inequality and like, all of these like actual systemic issues. It's all just a distraction. And it's almost like a giant thought terminating mantra or thought stopping cliche. You know, when I was talking to Kathy about all these conspiracy theories and stuff, she like wouldn't respond, and then she would just end the conversation with something like, "Well, I just believe in freedom." And I was like, that literally doesn't mean anything. It's just a thought-stopping cliche. It's something that
Yeah.
on the surface sounds like it makes sense, and it allows you to stop having to think about this thing that is giving you cognitive dissonance.
We had friends who moved to the States, and they became like, they're like, Obama started the race war, and I carry a gun with me now in my purse, and like all this stuff. And we're like, oh my God. And every time I would question them about their insane belief systems, they would say, we should understand. You have to be an American to understand. Like, you don't fully understand it. And I was like, I messaged their sister, and I was like, why do they always say that? They always just like, every time you get them on a point, they say, you should understand you're not in America. And then the sister said, well, it's just their go-to. That's what they say every time.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is, I feel like saying too long, you can't understand. You're in America. So because you're too close to the problem to see it. So
yeah. No, yeah. And it's all, and there's a bunch of different, like, there's so many different ways that you can look at this, and so many different and great people who are working on this from different angles. Like the study of narcissism, like what we were talking about earlier, like how like they're just so egotistical seemingly, and like, does the church create narcissists, or is it attracting narcissists? And you know, the for I just totally lost my train of thought. Other ways of like looking at white Christian nationalism. You know, but basically, like, the way that I am kind of like looking at it is through like the lens of cult psychology and conspiracy theories and things. And I was just gonna say, like, it's another thing that's like really important to like mention is like, when you look into this stuff, education provides empathy. You know, like, understanding the other person's perspective provides empathy. And like, my family, they're batshit, you know, like they believe some crazy things, like they believe some crazy conspiracy theories and things. And like, they also believe some like extremely hateful, harmful things, like racist, like they are racist. But people who believe conspiracy theories and people who join cults, they do it because for the same reason. Cults and conspiracy theories, people join them for the same reason, because it fills social and psychological needs. Because, you know, I heard one person explain it through the ABCs of psychology: autonomy, belonging, and competency. So you feel like you are in control and you have power over your life to make decisions. You are in the in group, so you belong, and then you are competent because you have like information and you know what you're talking about. You have secret, great information. And so like, people are looking for that in or out of conspiracy theories. Like, that is kind of what religion serves. It fills social and psychological needs. And it's just when you introduce the unethical, manipulative aspects of like thought reform and coercive manipulation and misinformation and conspiracy theories and stuff, where it becomes unhealthy. And people who join these groups or believe these conspiracy theories are often what you might call good people. They're not flawed. They're not stupid. They're not like, they're not all like drug addicts or anything. And all of the cult experts, like, they talk about this. They're doing it because they're good people, because they're looking for a solution to a problem, either personal problems with relationships or like substance abuse, or existential problems because they're worried about climate change or politics, or, you know, just how to be a good person. And so somebody is offering them a solution, and they are using unethical thought reform manipulation, and they fall for it. And you know, so us saying, oh, there's something wrong with them, they're stupid, they're flawed, is victim blaming, and it is a self-defense mechanism, because we want to think that couldn't happen to me. I'm smarter, I have better critical thinking, I have like whatever. So like, I would never fall for QAnon, I would never join the Moonies. But every single person is susceptible to these, you know, psychological tactics at different points in their lives. You know, if you're going through a period of change, or if it's just like a message that resonates with your preconceived biases and things. So it doesn't excuse what they do. It doesn't excuse the racism and the bigotry, or storming the Capitol on January 6th, or the Manson family murdering whoever they murdered. But it explains it a little bit better. And
Yeah.
it's just like and the problem is that there's no easy solution. There's no quick fix.
No, and that's part of why it continues. I think I'm going to be first in line for your book. Well, there might be some other people because you live in America, but I want to sign a copy when your book finally comes out. You've got on your website, you haven't got your book out up. When is it due? When is it like planned to be released?
I've never written a book before, so I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So I don't have like a date or really anything, unfortunately, but I'm working through kind of like the second half of it now. So
well, you have this whole section for resources for people, as well as podcast recommendations, author interviews. You got all your stuff on here, which is really, really cool. So go check out this link in the description. It's phenomenal. We did say we weren't going to go over 2 hours, and we're at 2 hours and 9 minutes. So I just want to be respectful of your time, but I just wanted to quickly, shout out. I read out Gnostic Informants chapter 4, but thank you, Myth Vision, for being a member for 7 months. David is my Messiah. His voice comforts my bed. There's it's so funny. I reached out. This is an inside joke. We reached out the other day, and he said, I said, oh, can you help me with this? And he said, yeah, I'll do it tomorrow morning. And he said, I'm in bed. And I said, oh, you're in bed. And I sent him a voice message, and I was like, because I know Ryan would be listening. I'm like, hey guys, hey guys, enjoy your bed. Sounds really good. And then he laughed, and then he said something back similar, and it's a funny joke. So yeah,
can we subscribe for these like nighttime?
I started OnlyFans. Me and Derek should start OnlyFans together. We just audible. Yeah, have a good night there. Yeah, all right. Well, thank you so much, Cynane, for coming on. It's been a real pleasure. Oh, wow, $10 from Nitty for Super Chat. Thank you. Cult Suck. Thanks, Cynane. Great conversation.
Thank you.
You can see like your links to other podcasts you've been on, the Stacey's Mum podcast, Sydney Davis Jr.'s podcast, Growing Up Fundy, both great interviews. I watched them in preparation for this. And of course, you've got some other links as well on there. But thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I'm sure that there's more stuff we could have talked about. I've got a whole list of stuff. And so we might have to do something again in the future, but it's been great. And here's the website, everyone. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
No, just thank you so much for having me on. It's so fun getting to talk to you and like connect like this. And yeah, just I struggled for a long time, not knowing that like there were resources available. So like the reading recommendation on my website is something that I am like very I don't know, passionate about. I have a calling from the Lord to get as many people as possible to see that the reading recommendations. So yeah, thank you.
Cool. Well, see you guys. It's been a real pleasure, and I'll see you guys very shortly. We have some awesome guests coming up: Dr. Jennifer Bird, Derek, Neil. We got a lot of cool guests coming up. Just stay tuned, subscribe, like, everything like that. And thank you everyone for coming out. This has been really nice to hang out with everyone. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.